In this seventh episode of our journey through the book of Ruth, we're going to be looking at chapter 1, verse 19 to 22 together, the end of chapter 1. Remember that Ruth has just pleaded with Naomi that she wants to go with her back to Bethlehem. And when she had convinced Naomi, Naomi agreed, and they and stopped arguing with her, and they journeyed back. And that's where we are in verse 19. It says, the two of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem. When they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited about their arrival. And the local woman exclaimed, can this be Naomi? Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, she answered, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has opposed me and the Almighty afflicted me? So Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth the Moabitess. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. And here we see something of an amazing journey that Naomi and Ruth made back from Moab to Bethlehem. It would have been it wasn't a quick journey, probably in the region of 70 to 80 kilometers journey, and would have taken several days, possibly as much as a week, and possibly through difficult and even trying conditions. So you can understand that their situation in Moab must have really been very desperate and dire, that they determined to make this journey. It was not an easy one, and the passage pathways would have been unsafe, and yet they made this journey and arrived in Bethlehem safely. And when we see they arrived, the first thing that really stands out is that they were welcomed back. It says the whole town was excited about their arrival. There was a uh, a stirring, there was a moving, there was a chatter among the people, and it wasn't an angry one. It wasn't a frustrated one. It wasn't the one that was saying, "Oh, why don't you go back to Moab?" It was one that was excited to see Naomi, one that was grateful for her return. And it's quite striking that this is the case because, yes, she fled Bethlehem. She fled the shelter of the Lord and went to find help in another land. And yet the people of Bethlehem, her family members welcomed her back, those that were living in the town, those that knew her from before, from those years before. They welcomed her back and they rejoiced even at her return. And it really is an amazing thing because we remember that she didn't come back empty-handed. She came back with Ruth the Moabitess, and these people would have known where Naomi had gone. They might have even heard something of the story of what happened to Elimelech and Naomi's two sons. And here she comes back with this Moabite woman. Remember that Moab was actually an enemy of Israel, of the people of God. David says of Moab in Psalm 60, verse 8, that Moab is my wash basin, and this was a contemptuous way to speak of another nation, and they were enemies of Israel. Moab had a very uh, terrible starting point to this nation. Moab was birthed by Lot's daughter after they had fled from Sodom and Gomorrah as the destruction came about, and they had lost their fiancés, Lot's daughters, and so in their despair they actually got their father drunk, and both of them slept with their father, and the one gave birth to Ammon, which were the Ammonites and also enemies of Israel. And the other daughter gave birth to Moab, who were the Moabites and enemies of Israel. This was a pagan nation. It was a nation that worshipped many gods. Um, they had a national god, but they worshipped several gods, and um, and these people were often at war with Israel, and even at times they were used by God to conquer Israel and to dominate Israel. We remember a very well-known story about King Balak, who tried to hire Balaam to curse Israel, and we remember that he tried 3 times, but each time the Lord spoke to Balaam, and he instead blessed Israel. And we remember that moment when the donkey ended up speaking to Balaam, and he could not curse Israel. The Lord prevented him from doing it, but he instead ended up blessing Israel. And Moab was at war and an enemy of Israel. And we see a whole chapter in Jeremiah chapter 48, that was dedicated to declaring God's judgment against Moab for the nation's arrogance and pride. And it's a very in-depth description of God's purpose judgment towards this nation of Moab. And so it's quite an amazing thing um, that these people welcomed Ruth, Naomi, who had fled to Moab, and Ruth, this Moabitess, who came back with Naomi. And it really is a bit of a challenge to us, I think, as to how do we uh, treat those people who perhaps have wandered away from us when they return. Um, do we wait for them with eager excitement to return? Perhaps a friendship where someone's wandered away and perhaps just lost interest in your friendship, or perhaps you've even been hurt, and there's been some sort of disconnection in the friendship. When they return, how do you treat them? How do you treat those who may even be considered your enemies? How do you treat those who perhaps have not treated you as well as you would like, who haven't um, uh, cared for you, been kind to you, been gracious towards you, been patient with you? What about those who have been actively arrogant and or even unkind and ungracious towards you? How do we treat them? And I think there's an incredible challenge here, even in the story. May we be excited when they make an offer of friendship. May we not be suspicious or quick to condemn. May we be open-handed and have open arms for those who want to engage with us personally, and those who want to be part of our communities. Remember, God had an incredible plan from the beginning to actually include not just one kind of people, but all peoples into his salvation plan. We see in Leviticus an instruction from the Lord. It says, when an alien resides with you in your land, an alien meaning someone who's not a native resident of your land, someone who comes from another land, a foreigner. When an alien resides with you in your land, you must not oppress him. You will regard the alien who resides with you as the native born among you. You are to love him as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Or in Deuteronomy 10, verse 18 to 19, Moses challenges the Israelites in this way. He says, he executes justice, talking of God, for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the resident alien, giving him food and clothing. You are also to love the resident alien, since you were resident aliens in the land of Egypt. And it's an incredible encouragement, actually, that God's intention was always to reach out beyond the boundaries of our own nationality, our own native experience, our own language, our own culture, our own race. God intended us to reach beyond that with the message of his loving kindness. I mean, firstly, he says that you are to love the native the foreign person as yourself. So love someone who is completely unlike you, who is outside of your community and your known circle of acquaintances and friends. Someone who is outside of that, love them, care for them, and welcome them in to your presence. I mean, God goes further where He actually includes um, foreign people even into the genealogy of Jesus. We just think of two that come to mind. Uh, Ruth, of course, who was a Moabitess and included in the genealogy of Jesus, but also Rahab, who was a prostitute even, and who was not part of the nation of Israel, but was saved as she welcomed the spies um, into Jericho and hid them, and was then included into Israel, the nation of Israel, but even more so included into the lineage of Jesus. What an amazing thing! And we remember even in the New Testament that as the salvation first broke out amongst the Jewish people, but then there was this moment in Acts chapter 11 when Peter was given a vision by God to go to another place and to proclaim the gospel. And he had this vision of these what they would have considered unclean animals being laid out before him. And the Lord said to him in this vision, kill and eat. And he said, no, I can't eat these unclean things. And he says, who are you to call unclean what I have called clean? And he would use that to propel him into the house of Cornelius, who was a foreigner, who was a Roman centurion. And he went into his home, and not only just went into his home, but he proclaimed the gospel there, and his whole household became saved. And then he came back and told the people of what had happened, because they were concerned that Peter had gone to this home of a Gentile. And it says that when they heard the story of what had happened, became silent. When they glorified God, saying, so then God has given repentance, resulting in life, even to the Gentiles. So his plan was always to include all peoples into his purposes. And then in Revelation chapter 5, we see this incredible song that is sung. It says, you are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals because you were slaughtered and you purchased people for God by your blood from every tribe and language and people and nation. And so we see this welcoming in, we see this including into the family of God from every nation and nationality. And this is such a challenge to us because God says to us, we must not show favoritism. We must not only welcome those that we are comfortable with, we are not only to include those in what God is doing in and through our communities, amongst those that we know that are familiar, those who are of the same cultural background, the same socioeconomic standing, those that we know, we are to reach beyond that. James chapter 2, there's this strong challenge. It says, my brothers and sisters, do not show favoritism as you hold on to the faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ. For if someone comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and dressed in fine clothes, and a poor person dressed in filthy clothes also comes in, if you look with favor on the one wearing fine clothes and say, sit here in a good place, and yet you say to the poor person, stand over there, or sit here on the floor by my footstool, haven't you made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? And the challenge is for us to have a open hearts to welcome people in. And that's what these people did to Naomi and Ruth, and what God in fact did by drawing Ruth into the family of God. And we see then Naomi went on to say, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. And that word Mara, we remember, was from Exodus chapter 15 when the Israelites came and there was water to drink, but they couldn't drink the water because it was bitter. And so they named the place Mara because it was bitter. But then Moses was instructed by the Lord, and he put a certain wood in the water and it became drinkable again. And and there's this incredible encouragement in that, that even when life is bitter, God's providence is at work, and what may taste like a bitterness at first can become sweet, because uh, Naomi had this bitterness, but it came and was transformed into a amazing kind of sweetness. I love the lines from the song, God moves in a mysterious way. It says, judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. His purposes will ripen fast, unfolding every hour. The bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. And so while we may pass through many bitter places in this life, we need to be careful not to stay in that place, because our bitterness might end up becoming blindness, where we uh, don't understand things rightly. And that is something what happened to Naomi, because she said, "The Lord has brought me back empty." She was blinded in that moment, not to recognize actually she hadn't come back empty, but the Lord had blessed her with this incredible daughter-in-law who God would actually use to provide a means of provision for her in an ongoing way, and would bless her with an ongoing family line. And 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 so we need to be cautious that our bitterness and our hardness doesn't turn to blindness, that we recognize that behind this frowning providence there is a smiling face of God, eager to do us good. And we hear this incredible statement that Naomi says, that the Lord has opposed me, the Almighty has afflicted me. And I want to ask us today, is it wrong for Naomi to say that? Was this untrue? And I want to say, I think it was true in a sense, but it was also wrong, because the Lord had done this work. God was not removed from this moment. It wasn't that they were outside of the authority and the governing hand of God, but it was wrong to say that the Almighty has afflicted her. Yes, she has tasted this bitter providence, but she needed to uh, see with her eyes that actually. Um, the bud may have a bitter taste, but sweet will be the flower. Consider Job's story of loss, and Job um, was afflicted in many ways and tried in many ways, and there was this moment as he in chapter one of Job, as he's just heard about his whole family being destroyed and all his material possessions being stolen. It says, then Job stood up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. He fell to the ground and worshipped, saying, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will leave this earth. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And so, was he wrong in saying that the Lord has taken away in this moment? Absolutely not. He was right, because it says there, throughout all this, Job did not sin, blame God for anything. He was not sinning in attributing this to God, but he didn't blame God. He didn't curse God. He didn't uh, uh, he didn't say that God has opposed me or afflicted me. Instead, he says, actually, Lord, blessed be your name. You've given me all that I have, and you've taken it away. I came naked into this world, and naked I will go back. And he says, blessed be your name. And so, my prayer for you and I is that as we may face times of bitterness, times of hardship, times of difficulty, as Naomi did, that we wouldn't become blinded by our bitterness, blinded from seeing actually where even in amongst the hardship, God has done many good things and God is at work in many good ways. That we would be have open eyes to see that, and that we wouldn't throw up our hands in despair, but instead we would say, Lord, you give and you take away. Blessed be your name. That we would trust him, we would believe that his purposes will ripen fast, that they will unfold every hour, that the bud may have a bitter taste, but that sweet will be the flower. God bless you, and we'll see you next time as we continue on in this incredible story from the book of Ruth as Ruth and Boaz meet each other.